One small, unimportant decision that you made that changed the whole trajectory of your life.
I have a really good one. At the end of my first year of medical school, I had to leave my crazy abusive ex-boyfriend because he tried to kill me, and my puppy just died. So I decided to stay with a friend that was right next to my school. After a couple of months, I decided to get on a dating app because I wanted to meet new people. I wasn't really finding anybody near me that I was connecting with, so I decided to change it from 10-mile distance to a 25-mile distance. Mind you, I did not have a profile picture on my dating app because I thought my ex was going to find me, so I put this really pretty flower on there. In a couple of days, I met this really amazing guy who told me that if I didn't have a profile picture, I was going to get kicked off the app. And sure enough, the moderators told me the same thing. I thought the guy was really nice, and he was obviously really cute, so I decided to meet up with him. When we met in person, he told me he moved 23 miles within my distance 2 weeks prior, and we're celebrating our 3rd-year wedding anniversary this month. So don't be afraid to extend your dating pool because you don't know who you're going to find.
Don't come for my hair, it's wash day, but in 2004, I was spending the night at my best friend's house, and in the morning, she asked me if I wanted to sleep in or come with her to the incoming freshman volleyball camp. I called my mom. She said, hey, do what you want and call me and I'll come pick you up. So I decided to bring my book, go to volleyball camp, ask the coaches if I could sit on the sideline and watch while my friend played, and they said, sure. 5 minutes later, they asked me if I wanted to join. Fell in love with the game. Made the freshman team. 2012, I signed to play for University of Texas, full ride scholarship. And then when I graduated, I signed a contract to play in Poland professionally, became a professional athlete, played in Poland for 2 years, Italy for 3 years, Turkey for 3 years. And in 2016, I became an Olympic medalist. And I always wonder what my life would be if I didn't go to the camp and I would have slept in.
3 years ago, I decided to go on a solo backpacking trip through Europe. And after planning the trip, looking at flights, itineraries, and costs, I decided to skip Germany entirely on my trip. But I started my trip in Prague for the work conference, and after work one day, I decided to go get a glass of wine. I spent a couple of hours at a bar with a couple of friends, got bored, and decided to leave. And after not being very successful at trying to find a new place, I stopped on the street to Google a place to go. And that's when my future husband approached me and introduced himself. He and his friends had been in Prague for a bachelor party. They had also gotten bored at the club that they were at previously. They'd also wandered their way down the street. And that's when my US American self met my German husband on a random street in Prague. And we definitely never would have met because I never planned to go to Germany in the first place. He visited me on a couple more places on that trip. We dated long distance for 4 months before he proposed, and my son and I immigrated to Germany.
Story time. Me and my siblings grew up in the hood, like come inside when the street lights turn on type hood. And we also had one of them janky ass doors that you could only open from the inside. Well, one day, me and my 2 younger siblings are home alone. We get bored. We decide we want to go play outside. After a couple hours, we want to go back inside, but can't get back in because once the door's shut, it only opens from the inside. Keep in mind that I'm the oldest of the 3 of us, and I'm 7 at this time. So what does a 7-year-old do when they can't get back into their house? They go ask the neighbor. The neighbor found it odd that 3 kids who were all under 8 were even home alone to begin with, so she called the police. They finally found my mom on a bender. All 3 of us got taken away, put into foster care, and eventually adopted. All because we decided to play outside.
I got my ovaries removed at 19, so I suffered from infertility. In 2018, me and my then husband decided we wanted to have kids. We always knew, ever since I met him, we knew we had to adopt. So we were going to go through the process and all that. We were looking into it. We already knew a lot about it. Before that, I was like, you know what, let me just get an appointment. I need to get this out of my head. Just see how much IVF is. I know it's $20,000 or something, so I knew it was out of our league. But I go to the appointment, and 1 year later, they have a program called embryo adoption, which you adopt someone else's embryo, and it was under $4,000. So because of that hinge that I had, it changed everything. I got to carry my baby.
Sign up for the gym. Let me give you a backstory. Back in summer 2018, my college gym was closing for summer session. You had to pay. It was expensive. I was broke. I signed up for a cheap gym, and on my 2nd or 3rd day there, I decided to work out. It was like a Friday night, 10 p.m. I just finished working, and I was like, oh, there's probably gonna be no one there. I wanted to deadlift, and the deadlifts were near the squat racks, and lo and behold, the person who was squatting was Steven, my boyfriend of now 3+ years. I was at a very dark and low point in my life at that time, and all I needed was a friend, and he became that friend. He saw me lift a heavy lift and acknowledged it, gave me a fist bump, and went on his way. We developed a friendship, and honestly, he became my best friend. With his support, I was able to maneuver through a lot of trauma and become a better version of myself.
I'd been dating this girl for about a month, and I was really into her. And up until that point, I had not had very good luck in the dating department. See, I was kind of opinionated, and I figured, if somebody's not right in line with me, I'll just move on. And I kind of moved on a lot. And I remember being on the phone with her when she directly called me out on a behavior. And she was pretty direct about it. And any time before that, I would have said something like, oh, that's your opinion, and planned my escape. But I'd been spending a lot of time teaching kids how to see others' opinions, so I tried out the same technique I was teaching them. I simply said, I can see how you would come to that opinion, which surprisingly stopped her in her tracks. Because I wasn't saying I was right or that she was wrong. Neither of us kind of knew what to do, which made us curious about what we could do. And for 20 years, we continue to be interested on how each other comes to form an opinion.
Back in 2014, I was 23 years old and I decided to go back to school for film, and I had no idea how to pay for it, and I read these 3 books and it changed everything. The first one, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, What the Rich Teach Their Kids About Money That the Poor Middle Class Do Not. I was like, okay, cool, I could potentially have money. Then I read this book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and I was like, oh, it's possible to have an online business where I could work part-time and go to school full-time. And then I decided to go to a Rich Dad seminar to learn about stocks and real estate. Like a seminar, it was a free seminar from the guy who wrote this book. During the seminars, back in 2014, one of the presenters went off script for a few minutes and talked about how his daughters were reselling stuff on Amazon. And I thought, that's interesting. So I went home, went on Amazon to find a book about that. And here it is. I read this. And since then, I've sold over $2 million on Amazon. Just because a guy spent 5 minutes talking about it at a seminar.
I never used to use Twitter. I fucking hated it. I never touched it, ever. But there was this one morning where I was listening to the Honeycast, and Michael Kovac said, follow me on Twitter. And I'm like, I don't use Twitter, but I'm going to go see if there's any updates on Hazbin Hotel, because I love the pilot. I go to his Twitter, I scroll a little bit, and then I see Vivzy Pop's name. And I'm like, oh, Vivzy Pop, she would have updates. So I go to her Twitter, and I scrolled a little bit, and right at the top, it says that she's looking for storyboard artists. At that point, I had only dabbled in storyboarding. I've never done anything professionally in animation ever. But I'm like, I have a little bit of boarding in my portfolio, so I dusted it off and I sent it her way in one little email. And then a week later, I was hired for Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss. And now I work in animation.
I started posting photos and videos of our family to the internet in 2013 after a freak accident destroyed our house and all of our photo albums and everything inside. And since then, it's now become a career, and we have over 2 million friends and followers that we get to share our lives with. And it's the most amazing thing ever. And I'm so grateful.
I decided to call my aunt. And here's the backstory. It was January 2016. I was 19 at the time. And at that point, I was 10 months into a very unhealthy relationship. My partner wasn't emotionally available. I wasn't emotionally available. And we were both trying to love one another in a way that we thought was best for the other person, not what they actually wanted and needed. And so we hit a bump where it was very clear that we had issues, but he didn't want to go to therapy. And me being worried about the state of our relationship, I decided to call my aunt. She had given me great advice in the past, and I figured she'd do the same now. And what she told me in response changed everything for me. She told me that I deserved somebody who was at least at my level or a little bit above, so that they could pull me up to their level and we continue to uplift one another. And that the relationship starting off as me lifting him up to my level isn't a good start. And she was right. And that night, I broke up with his ass and never looked back.
In the summer of 2011, I signed up for a 6-month subscription of Match.com, and they were doing something where if you signed up for 6 months and you messaged a certain number of people every month, you could get a free 6 months. So it's like the end of September, and I've only messaged one person, and I'm like, oh God, I gotta message some more people. So I start going through my matches, and I just start finding anybody that I think is even kind of cute. And I messaged this guy who looked cute, but kind of like outdoorsy and athletic and adventurous. And I'm like, he's not going to be into me. He was totally into me.